morning, everyone. I am Yasmin Taj, Senior Editor with People Matters, and I am your host for the SAP HR Connect 2020 virtual conference brought to you in association with People Matters, focused on the theme Redefining the Human Experience, Embrace the Uncertainty. What a pleasure it is to welcome you all who have joined us from across industries today. We are expecting around 500 plus leaders like you to join us for learning, networking, and collaborating. We have curated the entire experience at the conference on the theme of redefining the human experience, embrace the uncertainty. We have handpicked the sessions with the most interactive formats and are in the pursuit to maximize your learnings and interactions. Let me tell you a little more about the theme today. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we work, and managing employee experience has especially become critical and will become even more critical as the world of work undergoes further disruption and embraces digital. What are organizations, especially talent leaders, doing to adapt to this new normal? How will they manage the employee experience now with the expanded working world and disruptive technology? Addressing the employee experience needs to be a business priority for not only HR leaders today, but also the CEOs. And the crisis calls for creative ways to craft an employee experience that is holistic, progressive, technology-driven, and future-proof. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our partner, SAP SuccessFactors, for bringing in their expertise and experience and making SAP HR Connect 2020 virtual conference a possibility. So without any further ado, let's get started with this journey and unravel the elements of redefining the human experience, embrace the uncertainty. We have an exciting day planned ahead for you, full of learnings, engagement, and yes, we have quite a lot up for grabs as well. So keep interacting and keep your questions flowing. It is now time to move to our first session. So ladies and gentlemen, to address the changing business priorities of the current global crisis and defining the new employee experience, please welcome Aaron Green, Senior Vice President and Head of SuccessFactors, Asia Pacific and Japan, SAP SuccessFactors. Over to you, Aaron.
Thanks so much, Yasmin. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. I'm really excited to be presenting to you here from Sydney, Australia. And as Yasmin said, my name is Aaron Green, and I'm the head of SAP SuccessFactors for Asia Pacific and Japan. It's a real privilege for me to be, I suppose, here with you at India HR Connect today. I'm really thankful that you could join us, and I hope you have a strong cup of tea or a coffee with you, because as Yasmin said, we have a really exciting lineup for you today. So I'm sure that I don't need to tell you this, but the world today looks very different than it did even just a few months ago. At the edges of this altered landscape or this altered world is a bigger question. And in my mind, it's not returning to normal. Instead, it's how do we make sure that the world eventually looks better? And this is a conversation that I've had with some incredible people and business leaders, including Adesh Goyal, who's the CHRO of Tata Communications, just a couple of weeks ago. And incidentally, Adesh's session is just following mine, and it's one not to be missed. At SAP, we recently issued a report that we called Mind the Gap, which really highlights our findings around India's employee experience market in 2020. And in today's world, employee experience is more critical than ever. Now, I view COVID-19 as a little bit of a chance for employers to take up wellness and well-being a little more seriously. For example, Tata Communications has implemented happiness coaching, including twice daily meditation and mindfulness sessions for their employees. At SAP, we've introduced programs like kids yoga to just give a bit of relief to some of our working parents. But what an incredible experience, the idea of happiness coaching. It's a skill and it's an eventual mindset that I think will equip all of us with navigating life's experiences. So today, I really want to talk to you about experience and how we mind that gap. The chances are you've heard a lot about experience. Most of us hear about experience and the importance of it around the customer experience or of user experience. But organizations today don't just count when they're experiencing or what the experiences are of people outside of the organization. For example, if you've ever been inside of an Airbnb office, you'll have gotten a taste for what it means for a brand experience to be very deeply connected to the employee experience. I've been fortunate enough to visit some Airbnb headquarters, and I'll share that with you in a minute. And I'm sure many of you will be Googling photos of them throughout the day. But the Airbnb offices they're modern, they're fun looking, they're gorgeous, they're also really easy to use. And in many ways, there's no difference between what a guest experiences at an Airbnb property and what an employee experiences at an Airbnb office. In fact, many of their conference rooms, they have designed to mirror some of their most famous properties around the world. So again, it's that experience inside the office feels quite similar to what you'd experience as a guest. There's really not a differentiation between being an employee or a customer in terms of that physical workplace design. So I guess the question on a lot of people's minds is, does that really matter? Are the experiences of our people really that connected to a business outcome or a commercial outcome? In my opinion, yes. But let's not just take my opinion. Let's take your opinion from this. From our recent Mind the Gap report that I talked about earlier, we surveyed over 500 organizations in India, making it India's most comprehensive employee experience study to date. And in that study, we found that 90% of organizations prioritize employee experience in terms of a decision criteria that they make around technology investments. But 53% of companies that were surveyed shared that they do not believe that their HR teams today are equipped with the skills and capabilities to achieve these employee experience outcomes. So today we're really going to look at why people and culture professionals are the custodians of experience. And as a result, people and culture professionals become the custodians of change, and how this employee experience gap can be bridged with actionable advice and examples. So we're going to do a little bit of a history here. I'm going to start with how we got from human capital management. And in the creation of that category, I was really fortunate to be on the ground when we created that category. The idea behind human capital management was that it was driven by a desire for HR executives to get that seat at the table that we always talk about. In the same way that a CFO or a chief marketing officer has that seat at the table. So it was almost an attempt to credentialize the HR function in a different way. So we started talking about human resources, which had always been about people. We decided to start talking about people as capital, as assets. So it was almost an attempt to be able to say, look, we understand how to treat office equipment as capital, or we understand operating income or expenses in capital. So why wouldn't we just categorize people in the same way? And it created a category that absolutely offered some great visibility to senior HR leaders around the board table and to understand the business impact of HR. But the unintended consequence is that it also created an artificial ceiling for the practice of HR. And that ceiling really started limiting us because our people were considered assets. So what we've done is we've really extended beyond this, and we're now talking about human experience management. We're moving away from that idea of people as assets or people as capital, and instead we're moving towards the idea that people are the real fuel that power an organization forward towards its goals. These experiences are shaped by what experiences people have outside of the organization, what experiences they have inside of the organization. And being able to capture these experiences and tailor these experiences will be the difference between organizations that thrive and survive today and in the future, and those that unfortunately do not. So most of you have probably seen evidence of this already in your own organizations and careers. But the Asia Pacific region we are undergoing such an enormous period of change right now. In fact, McKinsey recently estimated that the number of large companies on a global scale that emerge from Asia Pacific will more than triple by 2025. To put that in context, over the next 5 years, the share of large organizations coming from Asia Pacific will move from 15% on the world stage to over 30% on the world stage. That is a huge period of change for us, and it's really, really exciting. But it's also a lot of change for us to navigate. And as Harvard's Clayton Christensen says and points out, simply reacting to change is often too late. Instead, organizations today really are tasked with preempting that change. So making sure that people are really driving towards your organization's purpose or the vision really depends on the experiences that people have inside of your organization. Just like a customer experience often determines the success or the failure of a product or a service. So are your new employees' first experiences with your organization making them feel set up for success or valued? Do the experiences of your longtime employees empower them to innovate? Are people's experiences living up to the organizational values that you state as an organization? Now, these are big and tricky and complex sounding questions. And in my opinion, the people that are most uniquely qualified to answer these questions and to craft these experiences is HR. Actually, it's not HR, because I think in a modern context, the role of HR has expanded to being the role of people and culture. So the role of a people and culture leader is now to be the custodian of your experience. And whether those experiences are the really fun ones or the more structural business process ones, all of it falls to the people and culture leaders and the functions to be the custodian of those experiences. And once you really shift the lens towards the experiences that individuals should be having and away from this idea of human capital management, there are some really challenging, but also some really fun new frontiers to experience. Namely, how do we engineer this? How do we build this? And how do we engineer this towards the outcomes that we want as an organization? So human experience management, or HXM, is not just a new phrase for an old framework. And in my perspective, it becomes really clear when we think about it through the lens of a customer experience. So think about how you feel as a customer and the type of experience that you have when a company designs a product or a business process around you as a customer and not around them as a company. I'll use an example. So let's talk about Ola. Now, Ola, along with the competitors in the ride-sharing economy, are going through a very disruptive time right now, as many organizations are. But the organization continues to innovate and show quite a bit of resilience. So Ola has created an incredibly seamless cab booking experience that was almost virtually unheard of in the past, with cashless payments and options for a huge variety of tailored individual needs. You can book right away, or you can book in advance. You can book offline. You can book via SMS or WhatsApp. You can book everything from a shared taxi to a bike or an auto rickshaw. But these are all decisions that are anchored in what's right for you as an individual, as a customer, not what's just best for the business. And that's really similar for employee experience, because in practice, when we act as custodians of experience instead of just managers of human capital or assets, we're really completely reframing how we prioritize the needs of our people versus just the needs of the organization. So let's break this down into roughly 3 parts. The first step is really understanding what people's experiences are today. The second step is really understanding what you want those experiences to be moving into the future. So pretty simple, we've all done change management. It's as is and future state. But the magic really comes in how you combine the two and design experience solutions that take where you are today, but drive your people experience to where you want to go in the future. And what's great about HXM is it completely reframes the organizational needs and priorities. Instead of the business needs sitting at the center of every HR process, the employee experience is now at the center. Think about it this way, as opposed to saying, we need to work in an agile hot desk office environment because that's what every other company is doing, or we need to offer free food because that's what all of our millennials will expect us to be offering. Instead, a custodian of an experience will ask, what is the experience that we want people to have in the organization when they come to work? And more importantly, how does that experience that we want to deliver and design drive our desired outcomes, commercial or otherwise? So by taking cues from our employees, we are achieving 2 goals here. Number 1, we are meeting the needs of our employees and we are ensuring that their engagement remains high. Our Mind the Gap report found that employee feedback is the most prevalent method that organizations use today to ensure that the employee experience is such that people feel that their voices are heard and that their voices are valued through human needs centered processes. So I guess the big question is, how do we make it all happen, right? That's always the question in these things. And it's really true that in times of change, whether it's cultural or technological or both, we can very easily feel overwhelmed, especially if we get into that terrible analysis paralysis mode. But in my opinion, the good news here is that big steps can be small ones and can have very impactful change and a huge amount of impact. I'll use another example. So American Airlines, I think, is a great example. And again, an example of an organization that is going through huge disruption under current circumstances, but is showing a ton of resilience in the way that they're running their organization. So American Airlines determined that that once a year annual survey just wasn't enough. And they've opted for a really different approach. So they're running that survey now twice a year, but they're supplementing it with very frequent, very regular, smaller pulse surveys to teams of their frontline employees and their back office employees. And there's a real business imperative for this. So a once a year engagement survey is a pretty old-fashioned approach today. It really fits into that idea of an HR business process that's set up for the business and not really for the employees. So if we put the employees at the center of that experience, we remove the idea that they are an asset. And again, we're looking at that employee and their feedback on a regular basis to determine what experiences we need to put in place to run the business. So annual surveys miss things, right? They miss things like sentiment. They miss things like understanding how people feel at different times throughout the year, because an annual survey assumes that everybody remembers the collection of experiences that they've had all year long, and that they are ready and prepared to remember them and answer a very long survey. And oftentimes we find that people don't respond because they don't understand the value in it. So moving from a big annual survey to a pulse survey is not a big radical change. It's a really small step, but the beauty of this is that it makes the future steps that much easier. Because once you start collecting different data points, it gets progressively easier to use that data to tell the story that you need, a more complete story of the entire organization. This is incredibly, incredibly powerful, and it's an outcome that influences organizational decisions and organizational direction. So it's actually, in my opinion, more comprehensive and data-driven than reporting on real surface-level numbers regarding human capital. So where do we go from here? So to recap, the move from HCM to HXM is really about HR professionals moving away from managing people as assets, and instead people and culture leaders taking the organizational reins as the custodians of that experience. This means really digging into what experiences are necessary for driving business outcomes, which experiences people are having right now in your organization, and then designing experiences that reconcile the differences between those two realities. It's very literally minding the gap. So start small if that's what's right for your organization. The key is to get started, because in order to navigate the change ahead of us, people and culture leaders will increasingly see a seat at the table turn into taking the driver's seat. With that, thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy the sessions that we have carefully curated for your experience. We have some incredible speakers lined up for you, including organizations like Titan, Flipkart, and Harbinger Group, just to name a few. And we have some fascinating thought leaders, from Jason Averbook, CEO of LeapGen, and an old friend of mine. I won't give away how long we've known each other. And Devdutt Patainik, who is a mythologist, an author, a speaker, an illustrator, and a TV host, who will share how to use the changing dynamics of employee experience to shape a sustainable future for your organization. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the sessions, and I'm really looking forward to helping you mind the experience gap. With that, enjoy the rest of your day.